Acres of Diamonds by Russell H. Conwell. Picture a man who had it all. Ali Hafed was his name, an ancient Persian farmer, living what most would call the perfect life. Rolling orchards heavy with fruit, endless fields of golden grain, gardens that would make you stop and stare. He even had money out on loan, collecting interest while he slept. This man was wealthy because he felt content, and content because he felt wealthy. A beautiful cycle, really. Then one night, everything changed. A wandering priest stopped by for the evening, and as they sat warming themselves by the fire, the old man spun a tale about how the world began. He described the earth cooling from a ball of fire, and how that cooling created something magical, precious gems buried deep in the crust. When he got to diamonds, his voice dropped low. Congealed drops of sunlight, he called them. Then came the kicker. A diamond the size of your thumb could buy an entire county. A whole mine of them? You could put your children on thrones. That night, Ali Hafed went to bed a poor man. Here's the thing. He hadn't lost a penny. Not one thing had changed about his circumstances. But something inside him had shifted completely. That tiny seed of what if, planted by the priest, grew into a forest of restlessness overnight. He couldn't sleep, couldn't think of anything except, I need a mine of diamonds. By morning, he was shaking the priest awake, demanding to know where to find these incredible stones. The irritated priest gave him vague directions. Find a river flowing between high mountains. Look in the white sands. You'll find diamonds there. So Ali Hafed did something crazy. He sold everything. The beautiful farm, the orchards, all of it. He left his family with a neighbor and disappeared on a worldwide treasure hunt. He wandered from the mountains of the moon to Palestine, then across Europe, watching his fortune shrink with each step until he was wearing rags and begging for food. Finally, broken, standing on the Spanish coast with nothing left, he walked into the sea and drowned. Heartbreaking, right? But here's where it gets interesting. That's only half the story. The other half contains a secret so powerful yet so simple, it might just turn your whole life upside down. Today we're exploring one of the most game-changing speeches ever given. Acres of Diamonds by Russell H. Conwell. This isn't your typical dusty old book. This is a phenomenon. Conwell delivered this lecture over 6,000 times in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And with the money he made, he started a small night school for ambitious young people who worked during the day. That little school? It became Temple University in Philadelphia. He didn't just talk about these ideas. He actually lived them. Here's my promise. By the time we're done here, you'll see the world differently. You'll discover the secret to spotting diamonds in your own backyard, those hidden opportunities for success, wealth, and impact that most people walk right past every single day. Ali Hafed's story isn't just about some farmer from ancient Persia. It's about you. It's about me. It's about all of us. So let's find out what happened to that farm he sold, and in doing so, discover where our own treasures are hiding. The story doesn't end with Ali Hafed's death. What happens next changes everything. The guy who bought the farm was out one morning, leading his camel to drink from a stream in the garden. As the camel dipped its head into the shallow water, something caught the farmer's eye, a flash of light from the white sand at the bottom. He reached down and pulled out a black stone with this brilliant, multicolored sparkle dancing inside it. Pretty rock, he thought, and stuck it on his fireplace mantel. Then he completely forgot about it. A few days later, that same old priest who had visited Ali Hafed stopped by to see the new owner. The moment he stepped into the room, his eyes locked onto that flash of light from the mantel. He practically ran across the room, his hands shaking. "A diamond!" he shouted. "Has Ali Hafed come back?" "No, he hasn't returned," the farmer said, confused. "And that's not a diamond. It's just a rock I found in the stream." "I know a diamond when I see one," the priest insisted. They both ran outside to the garden, fell to their knees by the stream, and started digging through the white sand with their bare hands. And right there, just beneath the surface, they found more stones, even more beautiful than the first one. They had discovered the diamond mine of Golconda, one of the most legendary mines in human history, right there on the farm Ali Hafed had sold. The same farm he'd abandoned to search for diamonds somewhere else produced some of the largest and most famous jewels the world has ever seen. The lesson hits like a punch to the gut. If Ali Hafed had just stayed home and dug in his own backyard, he would have had everything he ever dreamed of. He would have had acres of diamonds. This story is the beating heart of Russell Conwell's entire message. It's a parable about a trap we all fall into, believing that real opportunity, real success, real wealth exists somewhere else. We're constantly looking over the fence, to another city, another country, another career, thinking, that's where the good stuff is. Meanwhile, we're standing on our own gold mine, completely oblivious. And Conwell doesn't let you think this is just some ancient fable. He proves this pattern repeats everywhere, throughout history. Take the California gold rush of 1847. One ranch owner became obsessed with finding gold after hearing stories of fortunes being made down south. He sold his ranch to a man named Colonel Sutter and disappeared chasing his dream. He never came back. Meanwhile, Sutter built a mill on a stream running through that very property. One day, his little daughter was playing in the water and brought some wet sand into the house. As she let it sift through her fingers by the fireplace, a visitor noticed something glinting in it. The first gold ever discovered in California. The land the first guy had abandoned became one of the biggest gold strikes in history, producing millions and millions of dollars. The man had sold his acres of gold to go looking for gold. Then there's the Pennsylvania farmer who thought his land was worthless. The oil business was just starting up in Canada, and that sounded exciting, so he sold his farm for a measly $833 and left. The new owner went out to clear a stream so his cattle could drink from it. He noticed the previous owner had put a plank across the water to skim off this thick, nasty scum that the cows wouldn't touch. That scum? Pure petroleum. For years, the original farmer had been unknowingly damming back what geologists later called a $100 million flood of oil. The famous oil city of Titusville now sits on that exact spot. But maybe the most ironic story is about a young guy from Massachusetts who went to Yale and became such a hotshot mining engineer that other students paid him to tutor them. After graduation, the university offered him a teaching position for $45 a week. He scoffed. "A man with my brains, working for $45 a week?" he told his mother. "Let's go stake out gold and silver mines and get rich." So they sold the family home, and off he went. Nobody knows what happened to him after that. But the guy who bought his house was digging up potatoes one day, trying to drag a basket through a narrow gap in a stone fence. One of the stones looked odd. Turned out it was a block of pure silver, 8 inches square, worth an absolute fortune. The mining expert, the guy who supposedly knew everything about minerals, had literally sat on that stone while signing the papers to sell his property. He was so busy dreaming about treasure somewhere else that he couldn't see the $100,000 under his own butt. So here's the first big lesson from Acres of Diamonds. Stop looking elsewhere. The opportunity you're searching for is probably right where you're standing. But that raises an obvious question. If the diamonds are here, how do we actually find them? How do we train ourselves to see what's right in front of our faces? This is where Conwell goes from diagnosis to cure. The secret, he says, is almost embarrassingly simple. Find what people need and give it to them. Wealth isn't mysterious. Success isn't random. They're the natural result of solving problems for other people. The world pays you based on the value you create. If you're not making the money you want, it's because you're not meeting enough needs in a big enough way. He actually laughs at young people who say, "I can't start a business because I don't have any money." Conwell thought having no capital was often an advantage. It forces you to be creative, scrappy, and, most importantly, to actually pay attention. When you've got no money to waste, you rely on common sense, and common sense beats a pile of cash any day. Perfect example, a T. Stewart, who became one of New York's greatest merchants, started with $1.50. On his very first business attempt, he lost 87.5 cents. Conwell says how lucky he was to lose that money. Why? Because that failure taught him the most important lesson of his life. He had lost the money buying buttons and thread he thought people would want. After that disaster, he completely changed his approach. Before spending his remaining 62.5 cents, he went door to door, asking people what they actually needed. Once he knew what they wanted, he bought it for them. That simple shift, from guessing to asking, from pushing products to fulfilling real needs, became the foundation of his $40 million fortune. First, know what people actually want. Then invest your time and energy where you're genuinely needed. John Jacob Astor was another master of this. He once held a mortgage on a failing hat shop that couldn't sell enough bonnets to pay him interest. So he took over. But he didn't fire anyone or pump in new money. He did something strange. He went and sat on a park bench. What was he doing? Market research. Whenever he saw a woman walking by with confidence, head held high, looking stylish and put together, he'd study her hat. He'd memorize the frame shape, the ribbon colors, how the feathers were arranged. Then he'd go back to the shop and say, "Make a hat exactly like this, and put it in the window. I already know someone who wants it." He didn't fill the window with 100 hats hoping someone would buy them. He only displayed hats he knew someone already wanted. Business turned around immediately, and the shop became wildly successful, all because he stopped guessing and started observing. This applies to everyone, especially inventors and creators. Conwell tells this wonderful story about an unemployed man in Hingham, Massachusetts. His wife finally told him to get out of the house and do something useful. So he sat by the bay, whittling a piece of wood into a little toy chain for his kids. A neighbor saw it and said, "Why don't you make toys and sell them?" "I wouldn't know what to make," the man replied. The neighbor gave him advice that changed his life. "Why don't you just ask your own children what they want?" At first, the guy brushed it off, thinking his kids were probably different from everyone else's. But he tried it anyway. His daughter gave him a whole list. So he grabbed some firewood, because he had no money for proper lumber, and started whittling. He created the simple, unpainted Hingham toys that became famous worldwide. He started by solving problems for his own family, and discovered those needs were universal. That man became one of the richest people in Massachusetts, all from listening to his own kids. Your own life, your own frustrations, your own family's complaints, these are your greatest sources of inspiration. One of Conwell's best examples comes from a woman who heard his lecture in Connecticut. That night, she struggled to take off her collar because the button got stuck. Annoyed, she thought, "There's got to be a better way." Remembering Conwell's words about finding needs, she realized this tiny, everyday frustration was actually an opportunity. She invented the snap button, the kind we all use on jackets and clothes today. That simple invention, born from a personal annoyance, made her a millionaire. Her fortune wasn't in some distant land. It was literally under her chin. This leads us to one of Conwell's most passionate and, at the time, controversial points, the morality of money. He noticed that many good, religious people had been taught that wanting money was greedy or sinful. He saw people stand up in church and thank God for making them poor. Conwell pushed back hard against this idea. He argued that you should get rich, and that it's actually your duty to get rich. Why? Because money is power. It's a tool. In the hands of a good person, it becomes a tremendous force for good. Money prints Bibles, builds churches, sends missionaries, funds hospitals. Making money honestly, he said, is like preaching the gospel. He believed 98 out of every 100 rich people in America were honest. That's why they were rich, because people trusted them. He pointed out a common misquote from the Bible. Scripture doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. That difference is huge. It's the worship of money, The greedy hoarding of it, the obsession with dollars for their own sake, that's the evil. But earning money honestly by serving others and using it generously to help humanity, that's noble and good. This redefinition of success goes beyond just money. Conwell worried about how young people thought about greatness. The first trap is believing greatness comes from holding political office. The young person who thinks, "I'll be great when I get elected to something," has it backward. In a democracy, the office holder is the servant, and the people are the masters. The servant can't be greater than the master. True power and influence come not from titles but from your ability to serve your community, right where you are. The second trap is thinking greatness requires a grand stage, like a war. Young men dreaming of leading a battlefield charge and coming home decorated heroes are missing the point. Conwell was a Civil War veteran himself, so he knew better. He tells a moving story from his own life. After the war, his hometown threw a celebration for returning soldiers. Conwell, who'd been a captain, was the guest of honor. The mayor, a man who'd never given a speech but thought his office made him an orator, stood up to talk. Nervous and fumbling, he pointed at young Captain Conwell and called him a hero, describing his shining sword flashing in the sunlight as he led men with the cry, "Come on!" Conwell cringed. He knew any soldier knows that an officer's place in battle is behind his men, not in front. But more importantly, he looked out at his actual soldiers sitting in the audience, the men who'd carried him across rivers so he wouldn't get his feet wet, who'd found food for him, who'd died under trees in Tennessee. In the mayor's speech, they barely got mentioned. The hero was the guy with the title, while the ones who did the real work were afterthoughts. He learned something that day he never forgot. Greatness doesn't come from holding an office or having a fancy title. Greatness comes from doing great things with limited resources, accomplishing big goals from ordinary positions in life. The person who gives their city better schools, safer streets, more happiness, more opportunities, that's the person who's truly great. And so the journey of Acres of Diamonds comes full circle. It starts with a man leaving home to find his fortune, and ends with the profound realization that our fortune, our purpose, our greatness, all of it is found in the place we started. You have to begin where you are and with what you are, right now. Anyone who wants to be great anywhere must first be great in their own Philadelphia, their own hometown, their own neighborhood. Your acres of diamonds aren't over some distant horizon. They're waiting for you right under your feet. All you have to do is start digging. It's wild to think these words were first spoken over 100 years ago. And yet, has there ever been a time when we needed Russell Conwell's message more? We're living in the age of the highlight reel. We scroll through feeds showing everyone else's greatest moments. We see people living in exotic places, launching billion-dollar companies, achieving what looks like effortless success. And just like Ali Hafed listening to that priest, a seed of discontent gets planted. We start believing that our life, our town, our job, our opportunities somehow aren't enough. We develop chronic grass is greener syndrome, spending our lives looking over the fence instead of watering our own lawn. Acres of Diamonds is the perfect cure for that modern disease. It's a powerful reminder to bring our attention back home, to this moment, to the opportunities right in front of us, disguised as problems waiting to be solved or needs waiting to be met. The book's most lasting lesson is this: your perspective matters more than your location. Opportunity isn't a place, it's a way of seeing. So how do we start training ourselves to see differently? How do we begin digging for our own diamonds? Let me give you 3 simple, practical things you can do starting today. First, start an opportunity journal. For the next week, carry a small notebook or use your phone. Your only job is to become an observer of unmet needs. Every time you hear someone say, "I wish there was a way to," or, "You know what's so annoying?" write it down. Every time you feel frustrated with a product or service, write it down. These aren't complaints. They're clues. They're whispers of diamonds. After a week, you'll have a list of real problems waiting for solutions. Second, become a local expert. Instead of brainstorming some world-changing idea, pick one small local business you already go to, a coffee shop, a gym, a bookstore. For the next month, whenever you're there, do what John Jacob Astor did on that park bench. Observe. Watch the customers. What do they struggle with? Where are the bottlenecks? What small change could dramatically improve their experience? You're not trying to compete with them. You're training your eyes to see the invisible details that are the foundation of all value creation. Third, practice serving first. The foundation of all wealth, as Conwell taught, is service. Find one person in your immediate circle, a parent, a sibling, a friend, and ask them, "What's one thing I could do this week that would make your life a little easier?" Then do it, expecting nothing in return. This isn't about making money. It's about building the muscle of service. It's about shifting your focus from "what can I get" to "what can I give." That shift, more than anything else, is what uncovers the diamonds. In the end, the journey Ali Hafed took around the world was the wrong one. The real journey isn't outward, it's inward. It's about changing how we see, learning to spot profound potential in the familiar, and realizing that the most powerful thing we can do is serve the people right in front of us. Your life right now, exactly as it is your own personal, undiscovered mine of Golconda. That was a summary of Acres of Diamonds by Russell H. Conwell. We've hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read or listen to the full lecture yourself. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase hits you in an unexpected way. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today resonated with you, I encourage you to check out the original work, because it's not just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change how you see your world. Also, if you found this summary valuable, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.